I want to do a quick video going over how you build an apprentice for the higher difficulties currently in Dungeon Defenders 2. I'm currently doing Nightmare 4, and this is how I've built my apprentice. The primary stat for apprentices is defense power. This seems obvious, but it's a little bit more complicated than that, because as an apprentice, I'm only building one tower, which actually has no direct need for defense power, and that is the Frosty Tower. So, why do I build Frosty Towers, and what are they useful for? Outside of just their slow, on your items you can roll a secondary stat called Frosty Power. To kind of describe what this does, Frosty Power gives an area effect around targeted enemies that increases defense power of defenses. So when your Frosty Tower attacks an enemy, it creates this slow around that target generally, without this Frosty Power stat. But with Frosty Power, any defense within that AoE gets a percentage of your apprentice's defense power. So if I have one trap within this area of effect, and I have 1,000 defense power on my apprentice, and I'm using this 9% helm, that means that trap will get plus 90 defense power. And it doesn't have to just be one trap, there could be 10 traps within that area of effect, and each one will get that 90 defense power. So that's why defense power is pretty much core to this build for apprentices. And right now, I don't use it for anything else. Other stats like defense health, defense crit, any DPS stats, I pretty much don't care about them. You can roll Frosty Power on 5 items. On your helmet, your chest piece, your legs, your gloves, and your relic. This maxes out at 10%. In addition, on your relic, you want to aim for Snowstorm, which just increases your Frostbite Tower's slow. This is kind of luxury, but it is useful. And particularly on medallions you want this, because medallions are the ones that have defense power as their primary stat for relics. And finally, you want one weapon, and that's the Chilling Touch. Chilling Touch has the secondary stat of Frostfire. Frostfire is similar to Frosty Power, but instead of giving a percentage of your defense power to affected defenses, it just gives a flat amount of defense speed. And as I'll describe in my other videos, defense speed is the single largest DPS increase for damage dealing towers. So it's really key. You really want a Chilling Touch staff. These can drop on any character while you're playing because it is the unique weapon for apprentices. And even if you have a high Frostfire staff without defense power, there's a good chance you're still going to see a higher increase in DPS with Frostfire without a defense power on it, that same staff, versus a defense power staff without Frostfire. So kind of going over all of these and describing what you want for stats on your items, it's, as I said, defense power. So from there, I will go to my spheres. The first one, maybe most important for small spheres, is the defense power sphere. Obvious reasons, this helps your Frosty Power. Similarly, defense attack rate sphere. Although this doesn't directly affect anything with Frosty or even Frostfire, it will give your Frosty Towers a quicker attack speed, which will keep the buff up on your defenses for a longer period of time. Or more, it'll refresh more rapidly. The final small sphere I use is just a 4% increase in your Frost Tower's range. This is pretty minimal. There might be other spheres that you could sub in for this. If you're having trouble keeping them alive, you could use a tower health, but I really think this is the only sphere that you want to use. You could use the 10%, 10 defense power sphere, but that will give you such a minor increase in defense power on your defenses affected by Frosty that it's pretty much useless. For medium spheres, you want 2 of the Frost Tower range sphere. This increases your Frost Tower's range by 25%, which allows you to put them far enough back away from your walls that they should never die. For your large sphere, you want the Freezing Sphere. This gives you a 45% chance for your Frosty Towers to freeze an enemy target, and this is good because frozen targets can be instantly shattered in three ways: pulse smash from monks, seismic slam from squires, and earth shatter towers from apprentices, but those don't really ever get used, so it's kind of irrelevant, but it may be in the future a unique synergy between Frosted Towers, the Freeze Sphere, and the Earth Shatter Tower. And finally, for the Uber Sphere, it doesn't really matter too much. I use Shielding Guard currently, because this just helps keep my defenses alive a little bit longer if they're somehow taking damage. It's just kind of a utility usefulness. Going for stats, once again, the single most important stat is defense power, so I've maxed that. That's the first thing I maxed. From there, I maxed defense range, because once again, more range means you can generally affect more possible traps. This doesn't increase the range of the AoE around the target, just how far your tower can shoot. From there, I went for defense speed, as this will just allow you to refresh that buff quicker and the downtime will be less. So that leaves you with 30 stat points that you can put pretty much wherever you want them. I don't really ever use my Builder Apprentice when I'm outside of just trying to farm new gear, so putting in hero stats is kind of useless for me, so I put the final 30 points in tower health. This gives you just a little bit more survivability on your Frosty Towers if they're somehow being attacked. So that's just a brief rundown of kind of the core of your Frosty Apprentice in Nightmare 4, and even this is how the same thing I did in Nightmare 3, Nightmare 2, Nightmare 1. This is how I've always built my Apprentice, and I don't see that changing until Trendy does something to either make their towers better or make Frosty worse or change the interaction somehow. And one final thing I'd like to mention is some kind of quality of life things, and probably for me the biggest two stats that I wouldn't sacrifice Frosty for, but I would keep an eye out for on my gloves, is one is Service Call, which I don't currently have on this pair of gloves. I can show it to you on my Squire. It gives increased repair and upgrade rate during the combat phase, and this is actually really helpful because a lot of times I see people unable to out-repair the damage done by enemies in Nightmare 4. With Service Call, a high Service Call at least, there's pretty much nothing that you can't out-repair. It's very rare that I run into a situation where I can't out-repair something. And finally, the other stat that I like for gloves, going back to my Apprentice, is Finglonger. This increases the range at which you can repair and upgrade defenses, and makes it so you're a little bit more safe and can get to things quicker. So that's just a brief rundown of how I've built my Apprentice. If you have any questions, feel free to leave comments or message me, and I'll do my best to answer them.